Welcome to the Sourcing Hero podcast, produced by Una, a group purchasing organization that empowers sourcing heroes, and Art of Procurement, the world's largest procurement podcast network. I'm your host, Kelly Barner. The goal of the Sourcing Hero podcast is to capture the epic stories of people who are rising up and beating the odds to create exceptional value within procurement, directly from those heroes themselves. Today, my guest here on the Sourcing Hero podcast is Hugo Sanchez. Hugo is a senior category manager for supplies and MRO in the commercial real estate industry. In addition to being a pun lover, according to his LinkedIn profile, Hugo has a very clear philosophy on procurement that is tied closely to his philosophy on life. So, hi, Hugo. Thank you so much for being with me today.
Yeah, thank you for having me, Kelly.
So I'm sure everybody's going to want to get to know more about you, given how closely linked your sort of professional and personal philosophies are. What is it helpful for people to know about your journey to this point?
Yeah, I think, I was thinking about this the other day, and I think something that I like to think I'm different. Everybody's the same, but different in a way, right? Is that I don't take myself too serious, both personally and at work. I like to be, professional for sure, but also, humor is my weapon, I say, right? And I like to make people feel at ease when they're working with me. So I think that the ability to bring that from my personal life and with the fun lover type things back into work, it just makes the whole relationship management side of procurement so much easier. So I think that's, the biggest thing is that you'll see it on my LinkedIn page, you'll see a lot of professional updates, but then some bad jokes that my kids roll their eyes at. So, like I said, I don't take myself too serious because, hey, we're all here once, right? So we're trying to have fun as we're going through it.
Absolutely. And I will admit, I love a good pun. I appreciate the wit that goes into making like a really effective, well-timed dad joke. So you're in good company. If you want to drop any during the conversation
All
today,
right,
I
don't
would
don't
say to
roll
you.
off the tongue. Don't roll off the tongue.
Now, you had mentioned relationships, and this
Yeah.
is one of those things that, regardless of everything else that's changed in procurement, right, tech and terminology and process, the importance of relationships seems to pass the test of time. You've actually built out a process for developing these relationships. Can you talk a little bit about the steps in that process?
Yeah, for sure. So I will say it's two sides to it, right? There's the internal facing side, and then there's the external, like supplier facing side. So, but I think the methodology applies to both. Is it's going to sound very cliche-ish and simplistic, but I like to say, that people in procurement have forgotten the relationship side of business as a whole. Right? We go straight into business, straight into we need to get this done, ABC done, and this is how we're going to do it. And while it might be, a good way to get some things done, that is something that is not sustainable in the long term, right? Versus if you develop a relationship with your stakeholders, you develop a personal connection with them. I'm not saying go out and barbecue with them every weekend, but know what their hobbies are, know what team they cheer for, know if they have any kids, any pets, anything that is interesting to them before you even talk about work. It opens up the conversation to more than, hey, I need to get this ABC done. And then you start to understand why they need ABC done, right? Then you understand what is in it for them in the long term that they might not have told you at the beginning. They just needed you to, move this wrench for them and that's it. But if you get a better picture, maybe the solution you bring with them might be completely different from what they were originally asking into something that is, fitting into the bigger picture, right? So, but you wouldn't get that if you don't have that opening with them. Because sometimes, unfortunately, procurement is seen as a bit of a, checkbox or red tape department internally where, oh, you're going to give me grief for using the supplier or that supplier. Again, I like to challenge that a little bit and say, well, maybe I would, but maybe give me the reason why you want to use that. And maybe we can bring that supplier into our program so that it's something that you can use. But again, it goes into pulling the threads of the relationships and also demystifying procurement for the stakeholders, right? Because they've worked with procurement for their whole careers. And if they had bad experiences in the past, you have to break that, preconceived notion they have from the past into something that's going to be more easy to work with. But that, it takes time. But again, I think
Yeah.
if you crack a few jokes, if you talk about the sports game or the weather, whatever cliches thing that it builds a bond on a relationship level, it's going to set you up for an easier conversation when ABC comes up. And then likewise on the supplier side, again, you help understand what is it that's in it for them beyond just getting the sale. Because again, the individual making the sale is also a dad or a mom or a brother or a sister, and you want to understand what is truly their motivation, so that maybe that can give you a little bit more insight into why they really want this deal, or if this is something they're just trying to do to meet a quota. Then you may get a better understanding as to what their incentives are, so you can sign for a better deal, right? So it's again a high level but simplistic, but I think it kind of gives you a little bit of that generic recipe. You can add your own twist to it to make it your own.
Well, it definitely resonates because I've certainly done my time in procurement. And it's not that people in procurement don't want to form relationships. It's just that we're so driven by all of the
Hmm.
different goals and metrics and KPIs we're trying to hit. And so while we think, oh, investing in a relationship is a, quote unquote soft activity, I'm trying to get spend under management or bring down risk or be able to put some more savings on the board. We have those quantitative metrics we're going after, but we can't forget about the intangibles as well. When you think about the value that comes, whether it's a relationship with a stakeholder or whether it's a relationship with a supplier, how do you think about maybe the value and the benefits that would offset the time and energy that go into building those relationships that no, might not be savings, but definitely still deliver value over the long term?
Yeah, I think you're hitting it on the nail with the definition of savings, right? Because savings doesn't necessarily mean dollar signs, right? Definitely a huge component, because again, that's been drilled into our heads in procurement. But we have to broaden the definition of what savings is. Savings can be, like you said, risk mitigation. It can be guarantee of supply. It can be first right of refusals. It can be, immediate access. Those types of things that might not have dollar signs on a paper, but have a huge impact on someone not being able to go to market because they don't have a connection there, kind of thing. So I think it doesn't have to necessarily mean that you're investing a lot of time to build a relationship and then you get to the business. I think those things can be done in parallel, right? Because, yeah, definitely. How many times have we been in a meeting where you say, "Hey, this could have been an email"?
A
Definitely, you
lot.
don't want to, right? You don't want to give up that vibe as you're building the relationship. Rather, have that meeting, but address the problem, but also, for first few 5 minutes of the meeting, get to know the person, and then next time do the same thing, and eventually by the time third meeting you have with them, you can
Yeah.
ask them about how Dogo's doing, and hopefully the vet give you good news. Here's where we are in the project, and here's what we're trying to find for you, XYZ. So again, it doesn't necessarily have to take you a lot of time. It sounds simple, it sounds cliche-ish, but it's just bringing the human into the room rather than the
Yeah.
role into the room, right? I think people, especially if you're in procurement, you're very creative, you're very savvy. People in procurement are smart enough to know how to be malleable, be adaptive to the room, right?
Yeah. Now, I'm curious about your perspective on sort of either the working from home or the hybrid work arrangements that so many companies and teams have now. How has that changed either the way you think business relationships work or your approach towards building them?
Yeah, man, it definitely threw a wrench into my usual challenge, right? Because I've always been in office and then now being fully remote. It has made me really appreciate every meeting in person that I get, because while you can make a connection with someone virtually and look them in their virtual eyes as much as you want, there's nothing like getting some chips and salsa together and breaking bread together, and just having that discussion. So it's made me value a lot more, like I said before, the human aspect, but it's made me value the individual on the other side a lot more, because if we're all remote and we're investing resources, time, effort to get together, especially if they're coming from a different city, different state, definitely I appreciate, again, bringing the human back into it. I appreciate individual being away from their family, being away from their loved ones, being away from something they might have had planned to be with me for an hour lunch meeting, 2 hour lunch, or business review, whatever it is.
Yeah.
so I'm going to be heavily invested in that meeting for them because I owe them just that much sacrifice as they're doing, right? So it's helped me in a way solidify the relationships that I have, and it's helped me make the other person in the on the table, appreciate me as well, right? And hopefully, maybe I'm being too soft here, but hopefully, again, by being the human in the room, they see, oh man, yeah, definitely, this person is someone I would love to meet with again. If maybe not in the city next time, but maybe they'll come to visit me if I come the first time. So it just builds that rapport. And again,
Yeah.
it snowballs. It snowballs because you do that once, twice. Again, as you're working, be it with stakeholders, next year when they need to work with you again for something, they're not gonna come off shy and quiet at the beginning. It's gonna take you 3 minutes to really peel the onion and understand what they want.
Right.
Rather, they're gonna be like, "Hey, Hugo, how's your dog? How's the game? Whatever. I really need help with this, that, and the other." So suddenly that initial investment that I did at the beginning of the relationship is paying huge dividends because now I can be quicker for them. I can be more lean and effective. I can make the right connections for them. And likewise on the supplier side, right? I have suppliers going to bat for me, if
Mm.
like on supplies in the supplies world, right? I mean, it's something, a unique part that cannot be found locally. I can call my supplier and say, "Hey, can you find this in the next state next door?" And they can ship it to us next day. Like they'll do that for you, right? Because typically, yeah, will they do that for that with a contract? Sure, but they will roll up their sleeves, the people on the top, to make sure you get it, or your stakeholder gets
Yeah.
it because you are important to them and they value your, not just your business, but also your relationship. And then I think that has a huge, again, going back to them bringing value to the table, has a huge impact because if you don't have that gear, that lever, that switch to run the plant or run, open the doors, whatever, you're losing money, right? And that's the value, right? So we're mitigating a lot of that by having those relationships in place.
Well, I actually think that's a great call out, especially when you talk about how it works with suppliers. It could be as simple as the decision to take a call or not take a call, right? It could be
Mhm.
somebody's like in between meetings and they look at their phone and they say, "Oh, it's Hugo. I'll let it go to voicemail," right? I'll let it go to voicemail and check back later
Mhm.
versus, "Whoa, Hugo's calling." And it could be he never calls unless he really needs something, or it could be, "Hey, I wonder how he's doing. I wonder how his dog made out at the vet. I'm going to answer this call and find out," right? But it could be the difference picking up the phone versus letting it go to voicemail that could be the switch you need to keep the factory running. You can
Yeah.
see, I think you used the word snowball. You can see how quickly those investments in bonds and relationships, you just
Yep.
need one phone call answered in a lot of cases for that effort to pay off.
100%. There's this concept in influence, and it's the intrinsic versus extrinsic. If I'm saying that correctly, right? Versus where extrinsic is someone that's doing something because it's a must do for them. They're following the rule, right? And it
Yes.
gives it keeps them out of trouble, right? Because they have to do that. Versus intrinsic is more empathetic. It's more you're invested in the relationship. You're doing it for the greater good of the relationship or the business or the company. So I think having a combination of both and the relationships that you build with suppliers is tremendous because you want them to see you as a genuine person, but you also want them to see you as, hey, I'm a really good business for you to be partnering with, right? So by having both, like you said, are they going to pick up my call? Are they going to reply to my text? Or am I going to be waiting a week before I hear back? If I build those bridges early on, I think people will come to you and know, right, that hey, this guy definitely is helping me out where I need it, and I'm going to help him out when he needs me to.
Yeah. Now, one of the other things that you had shared with me the last time we spoke that certainly appealed to me, and I think is really going to appeal as a concept to our listeners here on the Sourcing Hero, is the connection point between relationships and influence. Procurement always wants more influence. We want, whether you talk about the seat at the table, we want to be in the room, we want to have the ears of the people that make the company move and shake. And
Hmm.
traditionally, we might think of that influence as being a result of authority, but
Yeah.
it doesn't have to work that way. You actually talked about how sort of your way of being and way of working can just as easily lead to influence. So I was wondering if you could comment on that and sort of explain your point of view around how relationships build up towards procurement influence.
Yeah, certainly. So influence is such a unique thing to have, and it's such a unique thing that is hard to get, but really easy to lose, right? So the way I see influence, especially to manage it, internally and get that seat at the table is we're in procurement, and hopefully I'm not overgeneralizing too much with the procurement peers here, but we're usually like helping solve a problem, right? Procurement is brought in when something's going wrong, and something my mom used to say when I was little is when something's bad's happening, always look for the helpers, right? Be a helper in the room, even if you don't have any influence in the room right now. Be a helper, right? Raise your hand and say, hey, this is happening, I know XYZ can be done to mitigate it, can I connect you with that supplier, or can I pull this person in? Even if you don't have the solution, be a helper, because people like working with people that want to help, right? I mean, I know I know for sure I do, right? I don't want to work with someone that is just going to be, a Debbie Downer every creative idea that comes to the table, right? Always look for the smallest voice in the room, right?
Mhm.
See who's not being called on, and call on them and hear what they might have to say, because that person might have, the silver bullet everybody's looking for. And if you raise them up to the table and hear, hey, she has something to say, he has something to say, and then it changes the dynamic, or gives, it's like a linchpin moment, you're going to be remembered as that helper that brought that
Yeah.
person up. So again, it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to have the solution, but be someone that is willing to, help out the bigger team. Then the other piece, going back to other points before, is let your work speak for itself, right? If you're constantly providing the value beyond the dollar signs, if you're constantly proving the work, that having those connections with the suppliers, those connections with the national account managers, those connections with the senior leaders on the other side, by constantly proving that, letting your work prove the point for you beyond the dollar signs, then suddenly people that are, doing business planning for business development internally, or, organizational changes, they're going to ask for your opinion. They're going to say, hey, we're doing this. How do you think this will be, ripple effect, and, with the suppliers? How will this, rolling out a new P2P system, how will this impact our supplier relationships? How can we mitigate any impact? Suddenly your voice matters to them, right? And you're not being, pushed down something on you, rather you're being helped push something out to the team, in a bonding manner. So again, I think being the helper, using the influence or little voices you might have, will snowball eventually to give you that bigger, seat at the table. That again, you can use as you go into the role, as you grow with the company, with the team that you're on. People start realizing, okay, this person doesn't just necessarily know procurement, but they know how to help a team out, right? And again, bringing the human back to the room, be a helper, be someone that is going to be looking at everybody and not just your little bubble, but bringing every good idea to the top.
And yet, as much as we want to be human, and we certainly want to be helpful, I also believe that at least once you've been told you were too nice to work in procurement.
Yeah,
Is this true?
it was. Yep. I think it was probably, I think the career path, you start out as an analyst, supply chain analyst, and you move to the ranks, right? And when I made it to a lead position, I was aspiring to be a category manager at one point, and I had someone tell me, "Oh, but you're too nice to be a category manager. You're too nice to the suppliers. You're too nice to your
Poor
stakeholders."
category managers with this rep of being so
I
mean.
know, I know, but again, I think I completely understand, because generationally speaking, I think the way people saw procurement in the past, definitely, we were the table pounders, and the penny pinchers, and just thinking of dollars, and I
Oh, wait,
get
you
that
forgot pencil
people.
sharpener. If we're going to do
Yes, me.
table
I
pounder and penny
know,
pincher, we got to do
right?
pencil sharpener. Yep.
Yes, yes. Yeah, I'm bringing all the cliche lines now. But I mean, you take that feedback, and you chew on it for a bit, and then I was lucky enough to have a mentor, and that's an advice I'll give everybody: is if you have a mentorship program in your company or even outside, look for mentors, because there will be people. There's good mentors and bad mentors, so good luck. But there will be people that will be flat out honest with you and tell you, yep, this is how it is, or no, that's wrong. And I was lucky enough to have a mentor that told me, because I was struggling with that, right? I'm genuinely like to be, a nice guy when I work, both internally and externally. And I thought, man, that's going to be career limited if I want to stay in procurement, because I can't be fake to myself. I can't be someone that I'm not.
Yeah.
I'm not going to be a pushover for sure, but I'm not going to be the one that's, chewing a supplier out every time I get a chance just for the sake of doing it. So, my mentor said, well, but you have something that most people in procurement don't have, right? You have your humor. You have a way to connect with people that most people, struggle to do that. And even I struggle with it, my mentor was saying. So that is a huge, lever that others wish they had that you could use to your advantage, right? So I remember him telling me, because I used to struggle with negotiations, right? And negotiations are probably one of the most tense moments for someone that is, a nice, a nice guy,
Yeah.
let's say, right? So he said, well, use your humor in your negotiations, right? And break the ice, and then try to use that to your advantage. Where instead of going through a 3-day lengthy negotiation, break the ice, have an honest discussion with them, and say, this is where I need to land. How close can we get to that? But
Mm.
you're only going to be able to do that if you have a rapport with them, and you have that. So suddenly I was like, oh, I don't have to be, stressed out about negotiations.
Yeah.
I can have an honest discussion with my suppliers, because just like I talk to them about everything else, I can talk about this difficult thing using my approach. And lo and behold, I started getting results that way. And I was like, oh, he was right. Actually, I don't have to change who I am. I can adapt the world to how I do things. And it worked out for the best. My career progressed, and here I am now, senior manager, and still having fun, still having those relationships that I always try to maintain from the past. So yeah, don't let someone's criticism, then the light in you. I think definitely look out for different opinions and shine bright, man, because you don't have to change. Definitely be better. Definitely always aspire to do better,
Yeah.
but not if it's going to mean changing who you are as an individual.
Now, Hugo, as we start to wrap up our time together, I want to bring you into a
Mm-hmm.
tradition we have here at the Sourcing Hero podcast. So I'm going to give you a pairing of questions. You can choose either
Mm-hmm.
one to answer, and I haven't heard a wrong answer yet. So you also don't have to change who you are in order to answer this question. So your choices are: what does the idea of a sourcing hero mean to you? Or what do you think heroism looks like in a business context?
Okay. I think the first one. I think for me, a sourcing hero is someone that knows how to be a good listener, knows how to be creative, knows how to manage the situation they're put in, without being oppressive or being dismissive, and asking those questions, right? So that then they can go back and, like Batman, look at their tool belt and say, what can I use here? To come up with a solution, or a recommendation, right? Because we're never going to have the silver bullet 100% of the time. But if we can come close to that, I think we're going to be seen as heroes in our stakeholders' eyes, right? And I think, the perfect example of that is when you have someone that has, that, oh crap moment, I don't have toilet paper for Monday morning, and we have, a conference happening in the building. Help, right? And then you're able to rely on your relationships and come to the rescue, and get a pallet of toilet paper delivered. Yeah, supplies world. But it makes a difference, right? And suddenly you save their day, literally, right? You save their skin for Monday, and you can thank the supplier, and then the stakeholder is going to see you as that shining light that will come to the rescue every time. So I think someone, to paraphrase a little bit earlier, someone that is willing to help. Look for the helpers. Be that helper.
I think that is a great note to leave it on. Absolutely be a helper. Look for the helpers. In every situation, there's always people helping. I think I associate that with Mr. Rogers, sort of that community
Yes,
type of concept. Um,
totally.
Hugo, if people have gotten to meet you today and they would like to reach out and connect about your philosophy, or maybe to trade puns, what is the best way for
Yeah.
them to connect with you?
Yeah, and definitely. I mean, reach out on LinkedIn. I think I try to keep an eye on that as much as possible with all the craziness happening. But yeah, shoot me a message, ping me, or if you have a good joke, I'm always looking for a good laugh. So yeah, reach out on LinkedIn for sure.
Awesome. Well, Hugo, thank you so much for your time, and thank you for being with us today.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Sourcing Hero podcast. Join us again next time for more true stories of sourcing and business heroism performed by your colleagues and peers. Look for the Sourcing Hero wherever you get your podcasts, and don't forget to subscribe. Finally, don't forget, sourcing heroism is taking place all around us every day. Keep your eyes open and you're bound to see it. Until next time, I'm your host, Kelly Barner. Stay well, and always remember that you can be a hero too.